We already know the Prophet ﷺ already has taqwa of Allah. So the obvious confusion becomes when you read this ayah, why is the Prophet ﷺ being told to have taqwa of Allah? Here, he's the role model of taqwa in Allah. It's like telling the Prophet ﷺ to pray. Well, he's the first one to pray. But this also happens in the Quran, doesn't it? Isn't the Prophet ﷺ being told, وَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ قَبْلَ طُلُوعِ الشَّمْسِ وَقَبْلَ الْغُرُوبِ ومن الليل فتهجد به نافلة لك أقم الصلاة لدلوك الشمس إلى غسق الليل وقرآن الفجر. The Prophet ﷺ is told in multiple places, you pray, do tasbih, do it in the night, do it in the evening. But actually, arguably, every time he's told those things, was he already doing that? He was already doing it. And there's two implications of that. But Imam Razi will explain this better. We'll read Imam Razi a little bit because he did a wonderful job on this ayah. But I'll give you something easy. If you're already sitting here, and I told you sit here. Here, look. I'm already sitting here, dude. But if I sit here, I'll be right back. Right? Sit here, I'll be right back. You know what I actually mean? Stay as you are. I know you're sitting there. I'm saying keep sitting there. That's what I'm saying. But I won't say keep sitting there. I'll just say, sit, I'll be right back. Sit, I'll be right back. Right? Even though you're already sitting. So the verb can be used, the imperative can be used to tell someone to keep going the way they're going. Carry on the way they're going. So that's one implication. But this is actually, I would argue, that is true here, meaning carry on with your taqwa as you always have. It's an encouragement to the Prophet ﷺ. But there's something more going on here. He's being taught a new kind of taqwa. Because taqwa depends on the situation. If you were never married before and you got married, then you have a new responsibility. With that new responsibility, there are new ways for you to make a mistake. And when you're told have taqwa of Allah, now taqwa of Allah as a husband, taqwa of Allah as a wife, that's a new taqwa that you didn't have to worry about before you were married. When you became a dad, now you have to have taqwa of Allah as a dad. You didn't have to worry about taqwa of Allah as a dad before you became a dad. Rasul ﷺ is being told that in this moment, after Ahzab, with the marriage of Zainab, in this moment that he finds himself in, there is a new situation, and this situation requires a revisit to what taqwa of Allah means in this situation. That's why this phrase becomes so powerful and unique. Ya ayyuhan nabi ittaqillah. It's a new manifestation of the taqwa, as if to say the Prophet ﷺ needs to be made aware of something that he wasn't actually aware of because it's a new circumstance. It's a newly found situation. Okay. Now, let's talk about this third, because I talked about taqwa as a nabi already. Let's talk about what it means when I say caution that comes with leadership. Whenever you're in a position of leadership, you have to think about what you want, but you can never only think about what you want. If you're the head of a household and you just want to go and get some ice cream, well, no, the baby has a fever, or the work has to be finished, or there's nobody left at home, or da, 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 da. You can't just do what you want. You have to consider everybody before you make a decision. People that are not in a position of leadership can just do whatever they want. They have far more freedom. But people in a position of leadership, with that power actually comes a lot of invisible chains. Your actions don't just impact you, they impact everybody around you. And the bigger your leadership, the more people are impacted. The more and more people are impacted, isn't it? So you have to think very carefully about every single step you're going to take. And of course, people that get to leadership, dumb people don't become leaders. Well, nowadays there's some exceptions, but people don't just pop into leadership. If you're going to rise to leadership, you have to have the qualities of intelligence, analysis, understanding people, understanding the psychology of people, understanding behaviors, understanding consequences. You're thinking 3-4 steps ahead of everybody else, right? You're not just thinking in the moment. If you're thinking in the moment, you don't have leadership qualities. You have to understand the long term. You have to have the long haul understanding of of things. And if you don't have that kind of long-term thinking and long-term planning and strategy, you're not fit to be a good leader. So leaders by definition have this they're always looking at any situation as a complicated chessboard. And this move, how is it going to affect all the other pieces, all the other dominoes? Rasulullah ﷺ is the religious leader, he's the military leader, he's the political leader, he's the social leader, he's the psychological leader, he's the family leader, he's the moral leader. He's the leader in every capacity. He's not even leader in one space. He's a leader across all spaces, all at once. So when he's thinking about this marriage with Zainab, radiallahu ta'ala anha, and he's thinking about the consequences, that's actually natural for a leader. Like it would be like unthinkable that he, in the position that he's in, would not actually think about the consequences that are going to happen across the board. How is Zayd going to feel? How's that going to impact my household? How are Ummahat al-Mu'mineen going to feel? What is going to be the reaction of the closest people to me? I'm not just saying, oh, what are the munafiqun going to say? Because the Prophet ﷺ is not always thinking, oh, what are my enemies going to say? His track record shows he doesn't care what the enemies say. He's far more concerned about the impact of the ones Allah commanded him, وَخْفِضْ جَنَاحَكَ لِمَنْ تَبِعَكَ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Put your wings, cover your followers with your wings. Lower your wings for your followers, meaning be protective of them. Is this going to confuse my followers? Is this going to hurt them in some way? Is this going to stir them up? Are people going to be able to take advantage of them if I do this? Are some of them going to fall into a trap? This is actually part of the concern he has. There's another concern. I'll tell you from a leadership perspective. If you're a leader of a large organization, if, for example, in business, if you own a company as 500 employees, do you know all 500 employees? You know. Who do you actually know? You know your top management. There's a few people and those are your key people, right? You know them. And the next layer of people are under them. And then there's another tier under them. There's a kind of a pyramid going on, right? And the newcomers in the organization are the ones you know the least. The longer somebody's been employed by you, the longer you know them, the more you are seasoned with them, you're familiar with them. The newcomer is more volatile. Now let's not think about business. Let's think about the Prophet ﷺ. There are people that are with him that have been with him for a very long time. Right? They lived with him. Some of them lived with him, like Zayd radiallahu anhu. He's lived with him. There are people that have been with him through Makkah. There are people that have been with him through early Hijrah. So it's been a few years now. They've been on the battlefield with him. So there's quite a few that are seasoned in their Islam, and they're seasoned in their interactions with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'll give you one example of that that's relevant to our story in our surah. He told Zayd radiallahu anhu to keep the marriage going. This is in the Quran. He explicitly told Zayd radiallahu anhu to keep the marriage going. Yes or no? Amsik alayka zawjak. Hold on to your wife. Did Zayd let her go? He did. In the same ayah. And not even in the same ayah. How is the Prophet ﷺ telling you to hold on to your wife and you let her go? Because he's a seasoned follower. He knows the difference between when the Prophet ﷺ is commanding him and when he's suggesting something, but he's giving him the room to decide. It's not a black and white relationship. He understands the nuance, the complications of that relationship. For example, to give you another example, in your own lives, a brother and sister, if they've been close to each other, they have a different kind of communication with each other, yes or no? And somebody else walks in on a conversation between a brother and a sister where they're yelling at each other or they're using really aggressive language to each other. Astaghfirullah, you're talking to your sister like that? No, you don't understand. Just stay out of this. This is not, I know this is not for you. We operate in a different frequency that only exists between me and my sister. It's our world, right? Husband and wife can have that, best friends can have that. They have their own language, right? What I'm trying to tell you is there are followers of the Prophet ﷺ who are in the inner circle. They understand him best. They understand his even nonverbal communication. They understand what he means, what his intent is. They understand him in a more mature way. But now Ahzab has happened, the Quraysh's influence has shrunk, Muslim influence is expanding, so pretty soon what's going to start happening? A lot of new Muslims are going to come in, right? And those new Muslims that come in, are they seasoned and do they understand the Prophet ﷺ in a more subtle way? And they do understand his gestures and his nuance? They don't. Is there more room for them to misunderstand something the Prophet does? Absolutely. There's far more room for them to misunderstand. So as Islam is expanding, as the leadership of the Prophet ﷺ is expanding, he has to now be far more careful even about the smallest things that he does, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because there's too many new Muslims now and too much expansion now that's coming, and it's going to continue to grow, because from Ahzab onwards, and if, it's in hyperdrive after Hudaybiyah, it's going to explode after Hudaybiyah and become absolutely huge. In this time, every single thing that he does might be understood as the religion itself. It might just get understood as a religion itself. Somebody might, for example, in the absence of this surah, somebody might have thought they found out that the Prophet ﷺ told Zayd to keep his wife. He commanded Zayd to keep his wife. And then they found out that Zayd radiallahu anhu divorced his wife. In the absence of these ayat, somebody might look at that and say, hey, look, Zayd, not a great companion because he disobeyed the Prophet. They don't have a mature understanding, and they might come to that conclusion. And then that allegation against Zayd radiallahu anhu might spread across everywhere. And somebody else might interpret that to mean, look, the Prophet ﷺ is commanding you to hold on to your wife even if things are bad. And they might use that as a dalil to say, hey, I know that, he's beating you up and you have a couple of broken ribs, but look, hold on to your wife. You know what that means? Some people will develop an immature understanding and take little bits and pieces easily out of context and turn this into something else entirely. They can turn this into a completely different religion. And all of that depends on what? What they observed and misunderstood from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is being told, you need to develop a new level of taqwa of Allah, new level of consciousness with Allah, because now more than ever, your leadership has become far more sensitive.